The day my son's wife told me I was taking up too much space in my own home, I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just stood there in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd made biscuits from scratch every Sunday morning for 31 years. And I smiled at her, a quiet smile. The kind that doesn't mean what people think it means. Her name was Tara. Tara Lynn Okafor, though she'd dropped the Lynn somewhere around the time she decided my house was more her style than mine. I'm Augustina. Most people call me Gussie. I'm 67 years old. I spent 22 years teaching 4th grade at Millbrook Elementary in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I have owned my home on Pembroke Lane since 1991. My late husband, Edmund, and I bought it together. We painted every room ourselves. Edmund did the trim because I was never patient enough for trim work. He'd laugh at me. "Gussie, you rush everything," he'd say, and I'd tell him some things were worth rushing toward. Edmund passed 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 11 weeks from diagnosis to the morning, I held his hand while he left. There are things grief does to a person that I won't try to describe here, because some of you already know, and those who don't, I pray they learn slowly. After Edmund died, I rattled around that house alone for about 8 months. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a sunroom Edmund built himself off the back, and me, shuffling from room to room in his old cardigan, talking to the dog we'd had together, a beagle named Huckleberry, who passed 6 months after Edmund did. I think Huckleberry was waiting for permission. My son, Rowan, was living in Raleigh at the time with Tara. They'd been married 3 years. I liked Tara well enough in the beginning. She was sharp, funny in a dry way, ambitious. She worked in pharmaceutical sales. Rowan was in IT. They were doing fine, from what I could tell. It was Rowan who suggested it. He came alone one Saturday, which I should have noticed, because Tara rarely let him travel solo, and sat down across from me at the kitchen table and said, "Mom, Tara and I have been talking. We're thinking about starting a family. And the cost of living in Raleigh is it's a lot. We were wondering if maybe we could come stay with you for a while, just until we get our footing." I looked at my son. He had Edmund's eyes and my stubbornness, and he was looking at me the way he used to look at me when he was 12 and wanted something he wasn't sure I'd give him. "How long is a while?" I asked. "Maybe a year," he said. "Maybe less." I said yes. Of course I said yes. He was my child. They moved in on a Friday in March. Rowan brought boxes and good intentions. Tara brought opinions. The first month was fine. Better than fine, actually. Tara cooked twice a week. She was a genuinely good cook. I'll give her that. And Rowan fixed the gutters without being asked, and we had dinner together most nights. I thought, this is going to work. This is what family is supposed to look like. The second month, things began to shift. Small things at first. Tara rearranged my pantry. I didn't say anything. She moved my reading chair from the sunroom into the corner of the living room because she wanted to set up a home office in the sunroom. I said, "That's my favorite room." And she said, "I know, but I need good light for my calls." I moved my chair. By the 3rd month, Tara had decided that the master bedroom, my bedroom, Edmund's and my bedroom, the room where I still slept on my side of the bed out of habit, was wasted on just me. She didn't ask directly. That wasn't her way. She mentioned, casually at dinner, that Rowan's back had been bothering him and that their mattress in the guest room was really not doing them any favors. She mentioned it again a few days later. She mentioned that the master had an ensuite, which would be so much easier once they had a baby. I held out for 2 weeks. Then I moved into the guest room because I was 64 years old, and I was tired and I missed my husband, and I did not have the energy to fight my own son over a mattress. I want to stop here for a moment, because I know some of you are already frustrated with me. I hear you. Believe me, looking back, I hear you. But grief does something to your edges. It softens them in ways you don't notice until someone's already walked through the door you didn't realize you'd left open. By month 4, Rowan's sister, my daughter, Leanne, who lives out in Phoenix, called me one Sunday and asked how things were going. "Fine," I said. "It's an adjustment, Mom," she said, the way she says it when she doesn't believe me. "What's really going on?" I told her about the sunroom. I told her about the bedroom. I told her that Tara had started referring to the house as our place when she was on the phone with her friends. I told her that last week I'd come downstairs at 6 in the morning to make coffee and found that Tara had replaced my coffee maker. A perfectly good Mr. Coffee I'd had for 9 years, with some chrome espresso machine that required a tutorial. Leanne was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mom, that's your house. I know it's my house." "Do they know if it's your house?" I didn't answer her. That conversation stayed with me. I kept turning it over, the way you turn a stone in your hand, feeling its weight. Did they know? Rowan knew, surely. He'd grown up here. He'd put his handprints in the concrete of the back patio when he was 7. But knowing and acting like it, those had started to feel like two different things. The money situation I hadn't told Leanne about, because saying it out loud made it feel more real than I wanted it to. Rowan and Tara had agreed to pay $800 a month toward utilities and groceries. That was what we'd settled on. The first month they paid. The second month, Tara said they were a little tight from the move. The third month, Rowan said they were saving for a crib and a car seat, and everything adds up. Mom, you know how it is. By month 5, no money had changed hands since March, and I had stopped asking because every time I brought it up, something in the air between us went cold and stayed cold for days. My Social Security was $1,840 a month. My pension from the school district added another $620. Edmund had left me some savings, enough that I wasn't desperate, but not enough that I was comfortable watching it drain toward groceries for 3 people. An electricity bill that had nearly doubled since Tara started running her office equipment day and night. And a water bill I didn't want to think about. I want to be fair. Rowan, I believe, was genuinely caught between 2 people he loved and did not know how to hold that gracefully. He was not a cruel person. But he had a way of deferring to Tara that had become less a habit and more a total abdication. And there is a difference. The moment I remember most clearly, the one that changed something permanent inside me, happened on a Tuesday evening in October. I had made pot roast. I'd been slow cooking it since noon, the way Edmund liked it, with pearl onions and carrots and a splash of red wine. Rowan had mentioned that morning that he'd had a hard week, and I wanted to do something that felt like home to him. I set the table. I was just carrying the pot to the trivet when Tara walked in with 2 bags from a Thai restaurant downtown and set them on the counter, without looking at me. "I picked up food," she said. "I didn't feel like a heavy dinner." I stood there holding a pot of pot roast that had been cooking for 7 hours. Rowan looked at the bags, then at me, then at the bags. "It smells amazing, Mom," he said. "Maybe tomorrow." I put the pot roast in the refrigerator. I ate Thai food. I said nothing. But something settled in me that night. Quiet and certain. The way winter settles. You don't see it coming exactly. And then one morning the whole world has changed. I started paying closer attention after that. I noticed that Tara had begun referring to my home as the house to Rowan in front of me, as if it were a neutral, unclaimed thing. I noticed that some of my belongings, a small decorative shelf Edmund had made, a collection of blue glass bottles I kept on the windowsill, had been relocated to the garage without my being asked. I noticed that when Tara's parents came to visit for a long weekend in November, she gave them a tour of the house the way a person tours their own home, pointing out the sunroom and saying, "We're thinking of adding French doors eventually." The moment it broke completely open was a Thursday in early December. I had come home from my Thursday coffee group. A group of women I've met with for 11 years. We rotate houses, we talk too much and laugh too loud, and it is one of the best parts of my week. And I walked in the front door to find Tara on the phone in the kitchen. She didn't hear me come in. Or she didn't notice. I set my purse on the entry table the way I always do. And I heard her voice, clear and matter-of-fact, saying into the phone, "Honestly, the house is plenty big enough. Once Rowan's mom decides to downsize, it'll be perfect. I think she's just holding on for sentimental reasons. At some point, you have to be practical." I stood in my own entryway for a moment. At some point, you have to be practical. I went upstairs to my guest room, to the room that had been mine, that had always been mine, that my name was on the deed of, and I sat on the edge of the bed and I thought about Edmund. I thought about the 2 of us signing those mortgage papers in 1991, 32 years old, and terrified, and so happy. I thought about the way he used to say that a house was just walls and a roof until the right people filled it, and then it became something else entirely. I thought, what would Edmund do? And this is what I want you to understand about that moment, because it did not feel dramatic or triumphant or like the beginning of anything. I just got very calm. The kind of calm that comes after a decision, not before. I called my attorney the next morning. His name was Philip Stanhope, and he'd handled Edmund's estate. And he knew me. And he did not ask unnecessary questions. I told him I wanted to talk about my options. I also called my financial advisor, a woman named Yvette Drummond, who I had been working with for 6 years, and who had a way of laying out a situation that made the path forward feel obvious. I met with her at her office in Winston-Salem on a Monday morning, and I told her everything. The money that hadn't been paid, the savings that had been quietly diminishing, what I was thinking about doing. Yvette listened to all of it. Then she set down her pens and said, "Gussie, what do you want your life to look like in 5 years?" I had not been asked that question in a long time. Maybe ever, in quite that way. I said, I want to be in a smaller place. Something I can manage on my own. I want to travel a little. Edmund and I always talked about Savannah, about the coast. I want to stop worrying about money. And I want to feel like myself again, in my own space. Yvette nodded. Then, let's talk about what that takes. Pembroke Lane had been appraised 2 years before at $318,000. The market in Greensboro had moved since then. Yvette thought, conservatively, I could list it at $349,000 and do well. After paying off the remaining mortgage, which was modest, we'd refinanced years ago. I would clear enough to buy something smaller outright, put a healthy amount in savings, and still have a cushion I hadn't felt in years. I did not tell Rowan. I did not tell Tara. I know how that sounds. I have turned it over many times, wondering if I owed them more warning, more conversation. But here is what I kept coming back to. I had conversations, quiet ones, indirect ones, ones that were as plain as I knew how to make them without starting a war. The money had never come. The respect had never come. And a conversation with Tara, I had learned, was less an exchange of views and more an exercise in attrition. So I called a realtor named Douglas Abernathy, who came to the house on a Tuesday morning while Rowan was at work, and Tara was in Durham for a sales conference. Douglas walked through every room and confirmed what Yvette had told me. We agreed to list at $352,000. He put the lockbox on the door on a Thursday. The first showing was Saturday morning. I drove to Leanne's friend's house. Leanne had called her on my behalf, a woman named Sue who lived 20 minutes away and had a guest room and didn't ask too many questions, and I stayed there for 2 days. My phone rang Saturday afternoon. Rowan. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, there's a realtor showing the house. What is going on? Call me. I called him back that evening. I was sitting on Sue's porch with a glass of iced tea and the particular piece of someone who has finally done the thing they should have done 6 months ago. I'm selling the house, Rowan, I said. A long silence. Mom, I want you to hear me before you say anything, I said. I am not angry. I am not doing this to punish you. I am doing this because I need to. Because this is my home and I have not felt at home in it for a very long time. He was quiet again. Then, where are we supposed to go? You are going to need to find an apartment, I said. I'll give you 60 days. That's more than fair, Rowan, and you know it. Tara is going to. What Tara thinks, I said gently but clearly, is not what this conversation is about. We talked for another hour. It was hard. He cried a little, which made me cry, because he is still my son, and that does not change. But underneath the heart of it was something solid, and I held on to that. The offer came on the 11th day. Full asking price, conventional loan, buyer wanted to close in 45 days. I accepted it that same afternoon. Tara called me the next morning. I let her talk for a while. She used phrases like blindsided, and how could you, and this affects our entire future. I waited until she was finished. Tara, I said, whose name is on the deed? Silence. I wish you and Rowan well, I said. I genuinely do, but this is my home. It was always my home. I found a townhouse in a community called Birchwood Landing, about 12 miles from where Leanne's friend Sue lived. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, a small patio out back with a dogwood tree I didn't plant but already love. The HOA takes care of the lawn. The neighbors are quiet. The kitchen gets morning light. The month before closing, while I was beginning to pack, I found something. I had been going through the closet in the guest room. The closet I'd been living out of for months now, in my own house, and at the back of the shelf, behind some of Edmund's old paperwork. I hadn't had the heart to go through. There was a manila envelope. Sealed. My name on the front in Edmund's handwriting. I sat down on the floor of that closet, and I held it for a long time. Inside was a letter. 3 pages, both sides, Edmund's neat block printing that I would know anywhere. He'd written it not long after his diagnosis. I could tell from things he referenced. He'd sealed it and put it there, I imagine, for when I needed it. He knew me well enough to know I might not look through that closet for a while. He knew me well enough to know that by the time I did, I would probably need what was inside. He wrote about the house, about how much it had meant to him, but how he never wanted it to be something that held me back or hemmed me in. He wrote, "Gussie, a house is a place. You are the home. Whatever you decide to do, you take the home with you." He wrote that I was the strongest person he'd ever known, and that he knew I didn't always believe that about myself, but that he'd watched me for 31 years and he was certain. He wrote that he hoped, wherever I ended up, I had a porch and a good view, and at least one neighbor who made me laugh. He wrote that he loved me, which I already knew. But some things need to keep being said. I closed the letter. I sat there on that closet floor in the house we'd bought together, the house where we'd raised our son, and painted every room and put his handprints in the patio concrete, and I cried for a long time, the good kind of crying, if there is such a thing. The kind that has everything in it at once. I moved into Birchwood Landing on a Saturday in February. Leanne flew in from Phoenix to help me unpack. We put the blue glass bottles on the kitchen windowsill, where they could catch the morning light. We found a spot for Edmund's small wooden shelf in the hallway. We ordered pizza and ate it on the patio floor because I didn't have outdoor furniture yet and we didn't care. "You good, Mom?" Leanne asked. I looked at the dogwood tree. I looked at the quiet street and the good light and the kitchen that was already starting to smell like mine. "I'm good," I said. And I meant it in a way I hadn't meant anything in a long time. Rowan and Tara found an apartment in Raleigh. We have spoken several times since. The conversations are careful still, like walking on new ice, but they are real. Rowan apologized. Not all at once, but in pieces over several phone calls, which is probably the more honest way. I told him I forgave him, because I do. I told him forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, and he said he understood. I don't know what the future holds for them, or for me, exactly. I know I'm planning a trip to Savannah in the spring. Edmund and I always talked about Savannah. I know that I had coffee this morning on my own porch, in my own chair, in my own quiet, and that it tasted better than anything has tasted in years. I know that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself, for the people you love, for what's left of the life you have, is to stop waiting for someone else to see your value, and simply act like you already know it. Because here is what I learned, in that kitchen and that guest room and that closet floor. A home is not something anyone can take from you. It follows you. It is made of the things you carry, the recipes and the grief and the morning light, and the letters from people who loved you. It is made of you, and wherever you put it down next, that's where it becomes something real.